Every city in the world has its notorious past citizens. In Yorkton, one doesn't have to look far to find out who that is here: Harry Bronfman. This man became so famous across the province, he's become almost as legendary as his contemporary, Al Capone. I'm Hayden DeGrow, and I'm the Culture and Heritage Specialist for the city of Yorkton. I love learning history, and teaching people about Yorkton's past is a proud part of my job. Join me as I highlight fascinating people, places, and events from Yorkton's history and take you where these places can be found today. This is Yorkton Retold. In 1905, a young hotel owner from Manitoba and his older brother bought a hotel in Yorkton, known as the Balmoral. The sons of Jewish Russian immigrants, the two brothers were named Harry and Abe Bronfman. Abe was only 23, and Harry was barely a man of 19 when they arrived at Yorkton to work in their new business. Abe was eventually removed from ownership after his gambling and poker playing caused a small rift between the brothers. Harry soon became an ambitious businessman, advertising the Balmoral as the lap of luxury he felt Yorkton needed. The Balmoral was built in 1897 and initially named Arnold House, after its founder, Robert C. Arnold. Arnold made sure the hotel was well fitted with a large dining room and outfitted with the most modern amenities, which at the time were gas lamps, hot air heating, and other things. The hotel quickly became the most opulent landmark in the city, catering to the passengers coming right off the Canadian Pacific Railway. The bus we see in front of the hotel here, in this photo, was a shuttle that carried people and their luggage from Yorkton's railway station to the hotel down the street. Its biggest attraction, however, was its bar. Advertised as the longest bar in the West, the place was a massive gathering place for the men of Yorkton. Soon after buying it, though, Arnold sold the hotel to Herman John Langstaff, who renamed the hotel after a British landmark itself, Balmoral Castle. Eventually, the hotel changed hands and was eventually bought by Bronfman. The hotel was Bronfman's biggest business, and with it earning him enough money for him to expand his ventures. The block you see here, 3rd Avenue South between Broadway and Livingston, was one of the hotspots of Bronfman's businesses. As we see in this old panoramic shot from 1923, we see what the street looked like in Bronfman's time. On the right side of the photo is a building built by Bronfman. On the very corner lot of this building was a clothing store called the Fashion Stores, which offered ready-to-wear outfits for both men and women. To the south and west of that was Stag Billiard and Bowling, a popular men's haunt opened in 1919 that would go on to become one of the longest-running businesses in Yorkton history. Believe it or not, it didn't close until 1976. On the left, we see another building built and owned by Bronfman. On its main floor was another store, which is next door to a law firm. Down the street, we see the Allen Theater, another business controlled by the Bronfmans. This theater was originally called the Princess Theater and was popular with traveling shows due to its proximity to the railway. As we now look at this lot map, we can see more of the buildings that Bronfman either bought or built. But it wasn't just the Balmoral that Bronfman used to touch into the hospitality business. What we see here is another example of his efforts. This is the Yorkton Hotel, built in 1902. The hotel was initially the most lavish place to stay in the city, but sadly, things fell in hard times for the hotel in just a couple decades. Soon, the Balmoral overtook it on the luxury scale. Looking at the hotel in its prime here, the place was bought by Bronfman and his younger brother Sam in 1927 to add what would be considered a low-budget option for people staying in Yorkton. As time went on, despite its loss of luxury status, the hotel stayed on as a cheap place for visitors to stay, and it was still pretty popular. Today, while it is not really used as a hotel much anymore, it remains a proud symbol of the past. In addition to these properties, Bronfman also purchased the oldest hotel in Yorkton. This establishment, called the Royal Hotel, was built way back in 1891 on a plot of land that is the park we see right here. The Royal Hotel was a popular place to stay and was the standard to compare for both the Balmoral and the Yorkton hotels. In 1910, when prominently French-Canadian Prime Minister Wilfrid Laurier visited the Yorkton area, the owners of the hotel labeled themselves as the Hotel de Royal in honor of the Prime Minister. Though it was an unfortunate grammatical error, as the proper way to say it would have been Hotel Royal, Laurier still appreciated it and praised the hotel for its efforts. Not long after, the hotel started to fall victim to competition, and this is where Harry Bronfman came into the fold. In 1918, Bronfman purchased the hotel to prevent it from competing with the Balmoral. The reasoning behind what happened next, though, is still up for debate. Almost as soon as he purchased it, Bronfman demolished the Royal Hotel. Some say he did so because he wanted to build his own pleasure palace, but others say that he just used that as an excuse so that the only hotel along the CPR tracks was his Balmoral. Either way, when Bronfman was hit by hard times, he unfortunately never got the chance to replace the Royal Hotel, only building a small one-story business block that he leased out. Today, even that office building has been lost, with this park around me replacing it. By the 1910s, Bronfman had owned nearly 200 lots across Yorkton, making him one of the richest men in the city. However, just because you had money back then didn't mean you were always liked. Despite his prominent business ownership, Harry Bronfman was not always liked by people. In 1911, Bronfman threw his hat into the mayoral ring, wishing to become Yorkton's mayor. Sadly, two stereotypes befell him. One, he was Jewish, and anti-Semitism was a big thing back then. And two, he was not born in Canada, nor was he from the British Isles. This meant that the majority of Yorkton residents did not trust Harry, so he lost to his biggest business rival, Levi Beck. Beck, who also owned a vast amount of businesses and properties across Yorkton, cheekily gave Bronfman a consolation prize. This prize was naming a street after himself, called Beck Avenue, and naming a tiny portion of the same street, Second Street, after Bronfman's second place finish. That Second Street is what you see here, this half-block long stretch of pavement with no real businesses on it. This was the first setback Bronfman experienced while in Yorkton, but it would not be the last. Harry Bronfman's next setback came a few years after his loss in the mayoral race. This setback affected everyone in North America and enticed people to change their business plans. It was called Prohibition. This movement was called upon because many religious and women's groups felt that men were spending too much time and money in bars and not enough time with their families. They also felt that alcohol was leading to crimes as well as inadvertent marital infidelity. This meant that places like Balmoral's Bar, as well as Stegg's Billiards, which was located where this gym stands today, were turned completely dry. It is also what caused the Yorkton Hotel to fall out of favor, as many of these businesses relied on their bars and the money men put into them to keep their business afloat. Proposed in 1907, the government pushed against the idea for years, knowing that the economic impact would be huge. However, as World War I erupted, Prohibition was seen as a good partner with the war effort. By the end of 1916, the entire province of Saskatchewan was completely dry. Not to be deterred by this, though, Harry Bronfman was too smart and shrewd of a businessman to let this setback end his businesses. At first, Bronfman tried to just be more secretive with his patrons' drinks, but was twice charged with dispensing alcohol in his bar. While the first trial was passed off due to lack of evidence, the second time was proven, and Bronfman was charged with $1,500 in today's money. In response to this charge, Bronfman read the laws surrounding Prohibition and memorized all the loopholes. His biggest discovery was that alcohol was still considered a medicine in the government's eyes. This gave Bronfman an idea. Harry applied for a license to manufacture said medicine, and quickly built a new building right beside the Balmoral Hotel. Naming his new venture the Canada Pure Drug Company, Bronfman quickly began ordering ingredients through this company. It's rumored that, to hide his true intentions, Bronfman used old tunnels to store the overstock. These tunnels, located beneath downtown Yorkton, connected the oldest buildings to each other and the old buildings to the railroad yards, giving them a way to move goods without having to endure Yorkton's bitterly cold temperatures in the wintertime. While the presence of these tunnels has been confirmed, proof that Bronfman actually used them is another long debate and long mystery surrounding the man. Going back to the lot map we see here, we see where the building was located. Harry Bronfman quickly established a secret whiskey bootlegging operation throughout Saskatchewan, establishing outposts in various towns along the U.S. border. These towns included the modern-day cities of Weyburn and Estevan, places that intersected with Al Capone's Prohibition trade routes of the Soo line. In addition, the only province in Canada not to settle into Prohibition was Quebec, and Harry Bronfman's brother Sam set up a shipping company in Montreal to trade around the hidden hooch. As you can probably guess by now, not everything was going well for Bronfman. On October 7th of 1922, he got a rude awakening to the deadly side of bootlegging when one of his most trusted agents, Paul Mastoff, was murdered in Beanfate by a gang of American renegades. This, combined with his treatment as a Jewish immigrant, began to dissuade him from the business. As well, when Bronfman began getting complaints for the quality of his whiskey, he chose not to take ownership of the problem, instead blaming the shipping company out of Winnipeg. When the company sued Bronfman for this, his businesses became exposed and people began getting suspicious. As a result, to avoid the suspicions, Bronfman moved his family to Regina in 1921, settling in this massive house on College Avenue. Located across the street from Wascana Park, the house was one of the largest on the avenue at the time. Around the same time, Bronfman bought up a house that was once owned by, of all businesses, a bank. This house, used by the Imperial Bank of Canada to house their managers and their families, may have been an odd choice for Harry, as it was never established why he wanted the house. In 1941, he sold it off, leaving his family in Regina. Things only went down further for Bronfman. In the 1920s, after just 7 years of going dry, Saskatchewan returned to having alcohol, but in a very different manner. Now, the government fully controlled the liquor market. As a result, the Bronfman's loss of business and reputation in Yorkton, he began selling off his massive empire. In 1923, after just a short time in Regina, the Bronfmans moved again, this time east to Winnipeg, and after yet another short year-long stay there, they finally moved out of the prairies to Montreal to join Harry's brother Sam. The Bronfman family would never step foot in Yorkton again, but still, his business dealings during Prohibition would come back to haunt him, as a series of trials in both Regina and Estevan ended his businesses entirely in Saskatchewan. By the end of World War II, he had completely sold off his investments in Yorkton, with the Balmoral being completely transferred to its manager, Frank Brunner. While in Montreal, Sam and Harry rebuilt the family's fortune and later bought the massive Seagram distillery in Windsor, Ontario. When this was merged with the distiller Sam had already set up during Prohibition, known as Distillers Corporation Limited, they became the world's second largest distillers. Though he had cut business ties with Yorkton, Bronfman still sent money back to his connections within the city. When Harry Bronfman died in 1963 at the age of 77, he had gone from a poor Russian Jewish immigrant to co-owning the largest distillery in Canada, and became known infamously as the Quiet Capone in Saskatchewan. In his will, he bestowed $5,000 to the Yorkton Synagogue, which is what the building you see right here used to be. He also left money to found a Jewish youth camp in the middle of Quebec's Laurentian Mountains, called the Harry Bronfman Y Country Camp. It still runs today to help youth learn about Jewish heritage in a fun and wholesome way. In 1999, Harry Bronfman's descendants sold the family business to French conglomerate Vivendi for an astounding $139 billion in today's money. This is one of the largest corporate sales in Canadian history. While Vivendi remained the owner of some of the investments and parts in the sale, they sold off the distillery and beverage side to European giants Pernod Ricard and Diageo. Unfortunately, while Harry Bronfman left a significant tangible legacy in Montreal, with his distilleries still running in the cities and his youth camp still welcoming kids, Yorkton did not preserve his memory as well. Many of the buildings Bronfman once controlled on the lots I am standing near to were abandoned when his empire fell, with the others barely hanging on as commercial spaces. However, the biggest symbol of Bronfman's legacy, the Balmoral Hotel, remains strong, at first maintaining itself as a hotel, but then being transformed into a low-income apartment building. Tragically, in 1985, a communal kitchenette in the apartment building became the lighter for a raging inferno that claimed the entire building. While many people cried arson as the cause, it was impossible to determine what exactly happened due to the extent of the fire. It was the largest fire Yorkton Fire Department had ever had to face up to until that point, and was one of the biggest news stories in Saskatchewan in 1985. Throughout the Balmoral, to remind people of his legacy, Bronfman began to fall into relative obscurity in Yorkton, relegated to the annals of history books and archive pictures. Still, his name lives on in legend in the Canadian business community as one of the ultimate Cinderella commercial stories, and how one man managed to bend the rules and work his way from poverty to opulence. Today, throughout the city of Yorkton, historic plaques have been erected to showcase where Bronfman's influence was once found. He may not be as famous as the high school's latest great football player or the famous all-star hockey player that everybody knows. Harry Bronfman still helped bring Yorkton to the limelight in Saskatchewan. If you want to read more about his life, the City of Yorkton has a book on him for sale on their website. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. While not nearly as violent or ruthless as his American counterpart, Harry Bronfman wasn't called the Quiet Capone for nothing. Bending, but not breaking, rules all over the place until the very end, Bronfman became one of Yorkton's most notorious residents, a legacy that endures today. Notorious in his own right, Bronfman stands in the ranks of the bootleggers that rebelled against Prohibition, giving Yorkton its own connection to the notorious gangs. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. See you next time, history buffs.